started the AVN in 1994, I never dreamed that Australia would come to the point where not only the government is telling us that we have to vaccinate our children, but that a certain vocal percentage of the population would be out there calling for our blood as well. Now, I based my talk today on something that you may have heard from Nazi Germany by someone by the name of Pastor Herbert Niemöller. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. And he said, first they came for the Jews. So with apology to the pastor, first the pharmaceutically funded government officials brought in no jab, no pay. And I was afraid or thought it didn't concern me, so I did nothing. Next, they brought in no jab, no play. And I was afraid or thought it didn't concern me, so I did nothing. Then they started discussing no jab, no job, no jab, no pension, no jab, no school. And by then, I no longer had any rights, and it did concern me, but I'd waited too long, and I couldn't say or do anything. Let's not let ourselves get into that situation. We are told today that our healthy, unvaccinated children are placing their fully vaccinated peers at risk. Therefore, we need to have enforced segregation to protect those who are already protected, yet somehow are still susceptible to diseases. Now, that makes no sense. And segregation is bigotry. Make no mistake, bigotry. And we got rid of bigotry a long time ago. We are told that our healthy, unvaccinated children are disease carriers. Yet the science clearly shows that it is the recently vaccinated who can and do not only contract the diseases they've been vaccinated against, but pass them on to others for up to 90 days afterwards. And that is why cancer patients are advised not to be in close contact with anyone who has gotten a live virus vaccine within that time period. No vaccine can prevent you from contracting a disease because no vaccine conveys immunity. Immunity is not something you get from vaccines. No vaccine can prevent you from spreading a disease, even if you yourself display no symptoms. And we have the largest outbreak of whooping cough in Australia right now, with the highest level of whooping cough vaccination we've ever had. And it is the vaccinated who are getting it much more than the unvaccinated. And recent studies have shown that it is the fully vaccinated who are spreading whooping cough, not the unvaccinated. Through the myth of herd immunity, which does not mean what the government wants you to think it means, we are being told lies about how the less than 2% who are unvaccinated in the younger age group are somehow causing illness in the 95% plus fully vaccinated cohort of children. Aside from the fact that this makes no scientific sense at all, it completely ignores the fact that up to 60% of our population are adults who, for all intents and purposes, as I think Dr. Donahue said, are completely unvaccinated because they have not had boosters in the last 10 years. So if our children are placing the community at risk, the vaccinated adults who are no longer actually protected, if they ever were, are placing them at a greater risk. Now, the term herd immunity was never meant to indicate that diseases would be wiped out. This term comes from the 1930s, where a researcher was trying to explain why people who got measles were protected for a certain amount of time, why the disease was cyclical in nature, why you'd have an outbreak, and then you'd have a period of no outbreak, and then you'd have another outbreak. It was never meant to say that vaccines or disease could wipe out natural disease. When I grew up in the 1960s in the United States, segregation was considered a dirty word, as was bigotry. We knew then that only those who were bigoted were in favor of the idea of separating children from other children or adults from other adults. Back then, segregation was founded on a fear that people of a different color or religion, people who spoke a different language, or who were raised in a different culture, were somehow not good enough to mix with those who knew the right way to live. We were taught to fear those who were different and to shun them. And it was only through the human rights movement, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, that we finally came to understand how wrong those sorts of attitudes were and to overcome them. Yet here we are in 2017, and we've come full circle to not only bigotry, but government-approved bigotry, to medical community-approved bigotry, to a bigotry that is based on fear and ignorance, not on science, and certainly not on intelligence. Today, our government, our media, and our fellow citizens have been told that it is okay to segregate on the basis of medical choice. They've been told that it is okay to treat those who do not want to vaccinate differently, and to abuse them, to bully them, and to treat them as less than human, and that this sort of behavior will not be punished. And because of this sort of abuse, there are a lot of people who would have been here today, but they are afraid. So I salute all of you who came out today and showed that you truly support free choice and freedom of basic human rights in Australia. Thank you. Today we have a choice, and there is always a choice. We can choose to do nothing. We can sit back and hope that they, in the government, in the media, in the medical community, will leave us alone. But I'm here to tell you that if you make that choice, you will be participating in your family's doom. Those who stayed silent in the early 1930s when Jews were being blamed for every ill in society lived to regret that decision, if they lived at all. I am asking you to make the choice to resist. Resist tyranny in all its forms. Resist laws that are immoral, unethical, and that discriminate against loving families. Resist the fear that is being spread by those who want to stop you from thinking for yourself. Stand together with us today and into the future. Be brave. See my shirt? Be brave. And own your decision. Speak out when you see injustice being done. Share your knowledge freely and without fear. Be the change you want to see and make the world a better place than it is today for you, for your children, and for the future. You have the power. You just need to use it. Now, I have to admit to a bit of cowardice myself. I've been asked to speak about the AVN. Now, I started the AVN in 1994, but I did not start this organization by myself. I started it with many other families and with doctors and chiropractors and naturopaths and homeopaths who all believed that we should have the right to information about every medical decision before we make it. It's a basic right. And for a very long time, the AVN stood for that. And then in 2009, an organization called Stop the AVN was started, and their constant attacks that were supported not only by the media, but by certain members of Parliament, including the leader of the Greens, who actually stood up in Parliament and called for the AVN to be disbanded and thanked the people who were the most abusive and the most openly, attacking of people in our movement. And because of that, we tended to take a back step, and we tended to not quite be so vocal about the things that we were doing. But even though you may not have heard too much about the AVN, do not make the mistake of thinking that we have been sitting on our hands and doing nothing, because we have been participating in lobbying trips to Canberra. We have been participating in trying really, really hard to take the government to court over no jab, no pay. Unfortunately, we found out that our Constitution does not protect even the most basic rights of freedom of religion. So we have been trying really hard, and we have not been vocal. And I'm telling you here today that that is going to stop. The AVN is going to be out there. We are going to be your voice. Those who have no voice, we are your voice. We need your support. We need your help. But we will never stay silent while you are being discriminated against. So I want to let you know that from now on, you can count on us to help protect you. And we will be working with everyone in our community and everyone we possibly can to make sure that we are protecting your rights. On the table in the back, there are membership forms for the AVN. There is also paperwork. One of the really important things is making sure that everybody knows that they're not alone. So put your name and your address down. We're matching people up with local groups so that all of you can feel supported and know that you are not alone. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate this. And yeah, thank you.